So Allah created evil, according to this view.
Yes.
And say it again?
Yes.
What happened, Trenton? How did you become Muslim, my friend?
He's talking about, textual criticism and Bart Ehrman's view and stuff like this.
Just to understand, you're appealing to Ehrman selectively, because if you're appealing to Ehrman, then you would not have become a Muslim, right?
It's not that I'm just like trying to follow him as like a cult leader or something. I'm just seeing what he has to say on the Bible and everything.
Okay, but even with Ehrman, if you're following him, even as an agnostic atheist, his conclusion is, and he claims that it is a fact that Christ was killed. He says it's a fact that Jesus's followers, and he mentions Mary Magdalene and Peter, just two. He mentions them. They had visions that convinced them God raised Jesus physically to heaven and Jesus reigns as God. So if you follow Bart Ehrman's conclusions as quote unquote an objective historian, you don't get Islam. So why did you become Muslim? Let's put him aside. Let's go to your Quran. The Quran, if it's uncreated, you got one of two problems. If it's uncreated, that means everything in the Quran, all the historical events, all the conversations that the Quran mentions will happen, they're uncreated. So when the Quran says, Moses said this, well, that speech that the Quran records is uncreated. So now you're left with one of two dilemmas. Does that mean that Allah predestined that all the characters in the Quran would speak that way and do the things that the Quran says they would do? Because those speeches, those acts are beginningless. So was that predestined for them to do? For example, when the Quran says Moses slew a man, well, that is part of the Quran, and that's uncreated. So that means before Moses existed, the Quran already told us what Moses would do. So did Moses have free will, or is that predestined for him?
I think, there's multiple views, but I feel like whenever I think about it, whenever I think about it, it's that everything would be predestined.
So then Allah predestined everything that took place in the Quran, all the immoral acts, all the evil, all the idolatry. So Allah created evil, according to this view.
Yes.
And say it again?
Yes.
And you're okay with Allah creating evil. So you're okay with Allah creating individuals and creating their actions.
It's, it's hard to think about, but, if you think about it like a giant author, writing this very detailed book, right? Because
no, that analogy won't work, because either he's writing what he knows they would do, that makes Allah a dependent creation. Because if you're telling me Allah's writing a script, so either he's already programmed what the characters in the script will do, or he foresees what they'll do, but that introduces a second dilemma. What's a second dilemma? If you go with the view that Allah knows that Moses is going to slay someone, not because he predestined it, that means because it's part of his uncreated speech, Allah had no choice but to create Moses, because he wasn't free not to create Moses. Because if he didn't create Moses, that means that part of his speech would be falsified. So now Allah needs Moses to exist. Either way, you're creating a quandary for yourself.
I just don't see how in any, religion where we have God as the creator and knowing everything that will happen.
Don't go to the Bible. Remember, the Bible's suspect. I'm saying your view with the Quran being uncreated, because if you ask any Christian, no Christian, if he's informed, thinks the books of the Bible are eternal. They're not.
Yeah.
The Bible consists of books where God created human authors and inspired them to incorporate their human personalities to communicate God's words in human language. So as such, the Bible's not uncreated. We don't have the view of the Bible that you have the Quran. So you can't apply that to me as a Christian, but I can apply it to you because that's what you believe about the Quran. So I want to know, which view of the Quran do you hold? That these are predetermined acts, so that these characters that were written in were programmed to do exactly what the Quran says they would do? Or Allah knew they would do that, so now Allah's not free not to create them, because he has to create them in order for the Quran to be realized, which means Allah needs these creatures.
I mean, he had the Quran though, or it
has no beginning.
Yeah.
So if it has no beginning, that means these actions could not have been freely committed, but these actions were programmed to be committed by God. Or if you say they're actions that God knows timelessly will take place, that means now God depends on his creation and needs his creation to fashion and shape how he will speak. So that means Allah becomes a needy creature. So either way, you got a dilemma with your view of the Quran.
Yeah, for predestination, Romans 9, I've read that like a million times.
Okay, so let me understand what you're doing. You're justifying Allah predestining all things by going to a Bible that you think is not truly inspired and corrupt. So are you saying now Paul is an apostle? If you appeal to Paul to confirm that Islam is right about predestination. You just made Paul authoritative for me to now appeal to show why Muhammad is an antichrist. So do you want to use? I'll use Paul. So, but you told me you're a Sunni Muslim. So in Sunni Islam, it's fixed. Qadr, Takdir, one of the tenets of Islam. And it's found in the Hadith. Going to Romans 9 and trying to interpret it along the same lines of hardcore predeterminism, yeah, there are people do it. But there are other people who say, no, let's read it contextually, and it doesn't teach that. But you're saying you're a Sunni Muslim. So if you're a Sunni Muslim, predestination is fixed for you. So do you reject that? Because I'm trying to meet you where you're at. So
no, I don't reject us. No.
Okay, so you do. So you can't appeal Romans 9 because you can interpret it the way you want. Doesn't mean you're right. But I'm not interpreting Sunni Islam. I'm telling you what Sunni Islam teaches. You believe in hardcore predeterminism, where even in the Hadith of Bukhari and Muslim, you're told, Allah even wrote down and fixed the amount of adultery you'll commit, and you can't escape it.